hey, there's a news story that I just saw that made me think of one of the most common questions I get from guys that are interested in moving to the Philippines and living in the Philippines. And this is something that I address in my book. I wrote a guidebook to make things easier for you if you want to move to the Philippines. You can actually see it, that blue one there on the shelf, but I have a link in the description where you can pick that up and have an easier time. But even though I address this in my book, this is an opportunity for me to expound upon some of what I talk about in the book. And let's check out this news story that made me think of all this. There's this famous singer here in the Philippines named Yeng Constantino, and as you can see from the title of this news story, singer Yeng Constantino criticizes Siargao hospital, slammed for doctor shaming. Basically what happened is her and her husband went on a vacation in Siargao. Her husband had an accident and had to be taken to the local hospital there. And she did a YouTube vlog where she criticized the doctor from this hospital of basically not caring about her husband and his situation. And as you can see here, the video already has almost 1.2 million views. And it has 18,000 thumbs up and a whopping 75,000 thumbs down. And if you go through a lot of the comments, she's getting a lot of negative comments. Now, regarding her situation, I can't really say too much whether she's in the right or wrong. I don't even have time to watch the whole 35-minute video that she uploaded because I'm taking care of a baby with my wife and spending time with him, as well as doing other things I have in life. But I can share with you my experience with healthcare in the Philippines, and I can even compare it to healthcare in the United States to give you guys some information. Now, the basic question of what is the truth about healthcare in the Philippines? How is it? Well, overall, I would say it's pretty good. And the quality is actually pretty comparable at many hospitals to what you'd get in the United States. Now, of course, I live in Metro Manila. I live in a big city. There's a lot of great hospitals to choose from. In fact, I just had a baby here in recent months at UST Hospital, which is considered a top hospital. And regarding my experience with our doctor, with the interns, with all the nurses, the overall experience, and I did a video documenting all this, which you should go check out when you're done watching this video, because it documents and it really shows you the reality of the whole experience. But I really don't have any complaints about having my baby at UST Hospital. And in fact, if you saw the video, which you can also watch if you missed it when you're done watching this, when my dad came and visited the Philippines, my mom and dad, and we went to UST Hospital with my wife while she was pregnant to get an ultrasound. And not only which shows like how great the experience of the ultrasound was, but then after I paid for that ultrasound and I told my dad how much it cost us, and I told my dad it cost us about 1,100 pesos, which is about $20 US. And my dad said, that's absolutely amazing that you can come to a nice hospital like this and for only $20 you get access to this high-tech computer, this high-tech equipment, and you have this great experience, and that's all it cost you. And before that, when we were in the United States, when my wife was in the early stages of her pregnancy, we looked into getting an ultrasound there. And the cheapest clinic that we found, the cheapest place to get an ultrasound, they wanted $1,000 US to get an ultrasound. So think about that. Just over 1,000 pesos, Philippine pesos, to get an ultrasound versus $1,000. One's like $20. And then the cheapest place we found in the U.S. was $1,000. And not only, I'm sure, would have been $1,000, I'm sure there would have been a lot of hidden costs and hidden fees. You know, they'd probably say, well, that's just for the ultrasound. The gel that we had to rub on you, we got to give you a fee for that. We have to give you a fee for the water that you drank, maybe. They'll find hidden charges and fees for you. And one of the hot topics in the United States right now is this subject of universal health care. Should we have healthcare where taxpayers buy insurance and pay for other people's insurance? Should we do that? Because one of the biggest problems, one of the greatest issues with the United States is our healthcare, the high cost of it. Even if you have insurance, it still might break your bank. I have an old high school friend, and she was saying how her daughter broke a crown, and even with insurance, to get this crown fixed at the local dentist, it was going to cost about $1,100. That's with their insurance. They're still going to have to pay out about $1,100. And for that kind of money, you could fly to the Philippines, get the crown fixed, and have a mini vacation pretty much. It's crazy when you think about that. And one of the great things about Philippine healthcare is it's truly affordable healthcare. They really have affordable healthcare in this country, and probably the reason that is because most people don't have insurance. Now, the downside of all this is you're going to need money up front if you go to a hospital. Usually, you're going to have to at least give a deposit, and if you don't have money, they might not treat you. There was actually a news story from a few years ago. There was a guy, I believe he was a Nobel Prize winner even. He was either an American or a European, but he had something wrong. He showed up at the hospital, and he didn't have money, and they refused service, so he went out and died on the street. And I know when I had my baby was born a month earlier than we were expecting. And it's funny, a few days before his birth, my wife was saying, now we should make sure we go to the bank next week and we have cash on hand just in case the baby comes early. But he came earlier than we were expecting. So I had to take her to the hospital. And while she was in the delivery room, and we didn't totally know that she was going to give birth, we took her to the emergency room, and they said, well, you got to take her to delivery. And is starting to look like it was going to happen. I had to go down to the front desk of the hospital, and I had to give a deposit. I think I gave a $600 deposit, and then I paid for the rest later. I paid for more. I gave more money, I think, the next day, and then more, like I paid everything when we left the hospital. So that's kind of the downside. You're going to need either money when you show up to the hospital, or you're going to have to give at least a deposit, or you're going to somehow make them have faith in you that you're good for it, that you're not going to stiff them on the bill, that you will actually pay them. So that's kind of the downside of it, but the great upside is they actually have affordable health care here, at least if you're a middle-class person. Obviously, if you're super poor and you have absolutely no money, obviously then it's going to be a challenge. But definitely compared to the United States or the Western world, it's absolutely incredible. So in terms of healthcare in the Philippines, I'd say quality is comparable to the United States. The big upside is the cost of it. Now, something that this singer complained about in her video, what she was really complaining about the doctor of as not caring about her husband's situation. He just didn't care. And some people said, well, the doctors, they have to stay calm. They can't be panicked. But the reality is many doctors don't care. And I can give you a situation from my own life. After my kid was born, you're supposed to do these checkups at a pediatrician. We're going to a pediatrician in our area. And from the first visit, I got the feeling that this guy didn't care that much about us. To him, it was just a job. He's just putting in his time. This is what he does for money. And not only did he not seem to care, he didn't even seem very knowledgeable. When I took our kid in for his checkup at 2 months old, we were talking about a wide range of issues, and he gave us some advice of that we should start giving water to our child to drink. And this countered what they told us at the hospital, what the doctor and the nurse told us. They told us that for babies under 6 months old, you never want to give them water. And everything I had read prior to this point online, it said you never give a baby younger than 6 months water because they can't process it. They're only supposed to have breast milk, or if they can't have breast milk, formula. But you never give them water because it could create permanent damage in them. So this doctor, this pediatrician, he was telling us to give water. I'm like, I don't think that's right. And when we went home, Imabel talked to one of her friends who happens to be a pediatrician, and he said, that doctor gave you terrible advice. You never want to give a baby younger than 6 months water. So this is a situation where I think not only did the doctor not care, he didn't even seem knowledgeable about what he's supposed to know about basic stuff. So the reality is, anywhere in the world you go, here in the Philippines this applies. It applies just as much to the United States. It applies anywhere in the world you go. There's going to be good doctors and there's going to be bad doctors. It's like any other profession. There's going to be good ones of them and bad ones. If you go to an auto mechanic, there's good auto mechanics, there's bad auto mechanics. You go to a hairstylist, there's good people that will cut your hair, there's people that are making a living cutting hair that are bad at cutting hair. And that applies just as much to doctors as anything else. So keep that in mind. There's good doctors and there's bad doctors anywhere in the world you go to. And the reality is a lot of them are bad because they really don't care. Now, I want to bring up a third point, and that is that I was talking to my dad, and he said something about how healthcare is not an exact science. This is a lot of things that people don't think about, and sometimes people, they complain about their doctors, but it's hard to know whether they just got a bad doctor, or, like I'm bringing up here, the point of healthcare is not an exact science. Maybe the doctor was knowledgeable, maybe he did everything right, but things didn't happen. My dad was saying how sometimes patients die. Sometimes, the surgery doesn't go right. Sometimes whatever the patient's being treated for, sometimes they don't get better. Things don't always work out. So sometimes doctors are also blamed for things just not going their right, which isn't necessarily their fault, but unexpected things happen, or going in, a lot of the times there's a certain percentage. How likely is it to help someone? So the doctor can be knowledgeable, he can do everything supposedly right, but the patient doesn't get better. You don't get the results of what you wanted. So keep those things in mind. Overall, I think, especially if you're in a larger city, obviously if you're in a rural area like these people were, you don't have as many options for healthcare. There might only be one hospital around, if there's a hospital at all, depending how far out you are. But overall, I think, especially in the city here, healthcare is comparable for good and bad. In terms of being good and in terms of being bad, it's comparable to the United States. The huge upside is the cost of healthcare here, how much more truly affordable it is compared to a Western country. And I was also talking to my dad recently, and he was saying before he's going to die, he doesn't want to spend time in the hospital before he's going to die, because all that's going to do is just drain the finances of what he's supposed to leave behind to his family, to his children, his children's inheritance. So he would like to die in his house and not incur that cost of a big hospital bill beforehand, where it's just going to drain all your finances before you die, and then the person has nothing left over to give to their kid. But you can leave a comment of your experiences with healthcare, good or bad, and you can also leave a comment just on your thoughts. But also be sure to check out both the video where we take my mom and dad to get the ultrasound with my wife, and you see what a good experience that was, and see my dad's reaction to how much it cost. But also, you really got to see the video of my son being born, because it really documents the whole experience, the whole hospital experience of what it's like to have a kid here. And of course, that's one particular hospital, UST, which was a top hospital, and I don't have any complaints about it whatsoever. But be sure to check out those videos after you leave your comment.